Right now in the United States, a big thing that's being talked about is the Fair Minimum Wage Act, which would see the minimum wage rise to $10.10 an hour. Now, along with that is the Harkin-Miller proposal, which would make the minimum wage be pegged to the rate of inflation, which means as inflation went up, the cost of living went up, so would minimum wage, meaning it'd be easier for people to be able to pay for their day-to-day lives. Now, this is a big thing that's being talked about, and there are many benefits. Now, here are some of the benefits that are being proposed along with this. Raising the federal minimum wage to $10.10 by 2016 would return the federal minimum wage to roughly the same inflation-adjusted value that it had in the late 1960s. An increase to $10.10 would either directly or indirectly raise the wages of 27.8 million workers who would receive about $35 billion in additional wages over the phase-in period. Across the phase-in period of the incomes, the GDP would grow by about $22 billion, resulting in the creation of around 85,000 net new jobs over that period. The workers who would receive a raise do not fit the stereotypes of low-wage workers. Among the affected workers, the average age is 35 years old, nearly 88% of at least 20 years old. And more than a third, 34.5%, or at least 40 years old. Of affected workers, about 54% of full-time, about 69% of income, have families with family incomes of less than $60,000, and more than a quarter have children. The average affected worker earns half of his or her family's total income. Now, there's many other benefits to this too. Obviously, when a population has more money, it goes out and it spends that money. This stimulates demand, and then this stimulates the capitalist to go out and spend more money on investment to create more products and then create new jobs. And then this in turn creates new spenders. I mean, this is basically like a Keynesian type proposal. If you increase the minimum wage, people will spend more, and this obviously stimulates spending. A lot of what the quantitative easing was supposed to do, except that they kind of left out that mechanism that forces the banks to put out the money for that. However, I am a little bit skeptical about this. The problem is, it won't work. Now, don't accuse me of taking the capitalist side on this, because I'm not one to support the capitalist class or the existence of it. I do, however, recognize that in a capitalist system, the capitalist is the one that holds the power. There is going to be a retaliation against the minimum wage. If you raise it, capitalists are going to do something to counteract the effects that it's going to have on it. Because we live in a system of a struggle between two classes. If you raise the minimum wage, the capitalists are going to hire less people. All we have to do is take a look at what Walmart did after Obamacare was passed. In order to avoid paying out to Obamacare, all they did was just make everybody part-time employees. The capitalists aren't going to actually stand there and put up with somebody cutting into their collection of surplus value. The same thing is going to happen here. What they are going to do in retaliation for the increase in the minimum wage is increase the rate of exploitation. In other words, find ways to increase the amount of surplus value they get from the labor of workers. But what does it mean to raise the rate of exploitation? It means to have the workers create more surplus value than they did before. Workers put in labor. That labor creates value. That value must be greater than the amount that they're paid. This value that goes beyond what the workers paid is what's called surplus value. This is also known as a profit for the capitalist. What they are going to have to do is find a way to raise this to combat the effects of a higher minimum wage. One of those things is to make workers work longer hours, to produce more units per hour than they would have before. The capitalists are going to find some way to keep their profits and not allow this act of raising the minimum wage to cut into it. The whole point of being a capitalist is to collect surplus value. Now let's go into this a little bit deeper. The surplus value generated in the process of production by C, the capital advanced, or in other words, the self-expansion of the value of the capital C, presents itself for our consideration in the first place as a surplus, as the amount by which the value of the product exceeds the value of its constituent element. we have seen that the laborer during one portion of the labor process produces only the value of his labor power, that is, the value of his means of subsistence. Now, since his work forms a part of a system based on the social division of labor, he does not directly produce the actual necessaries which he himself consumes. He produces instead a particular commodity, yarn for example, whose value is equal to the value of those necessaries or of the money which they can be bought. During the second period of the labor process, that in which the labor is no longer necessary labor, the workman, it is true, labors, expends labor power, but his labor no longer being necessary labor, he creates no value for himself. He creates surplus value, which, for the capitalist, has all the charms of a creation out of nothing. This portion of the working day I name surplus labor time, and to the labor expended during that time, I give the name surplus labor. The rate of surplus value is therefore an exact expression for the degree of exploitation of labor power by capital, or of the laborer by the capitalist. What this means is that even if the minimum wage is increased, the capitalists already have an answer for it. All of this is taking place in the context of a capitalist system, a system that the capitalists own. The workers are struggling inside of the oppressive system itself. No matter what they do or whatever stunt they pull, the capitalist always has an answer for it that will maintain his profits. The capitalist always finds a way to win in his own system. The capitalists have another non-permanent solution to this problem. Imperialism, meaning what they do is they go into the third world, get super rates of exploitation, and then use part of the value taken from third world workers to subsidize the wages of first world workers, which means that which they would have lost from the increase in the minimum wage or other factors that have come up in history. They then take the super exploited value of the third world and use that to pay for the increase in what it is the first world workers get. But in the end, the same contradiction remains. This is not a permanent solution and forces that contradiction to remain in place. What this shows us is that no amount of social democratic reforms can actually solve the problem. You can push all kinds of policies and reforms all you want. It's not going to actually take care of the problem. That problem being, it is from the mechanism of capitalism itself. That contradiction inherent with the capitalist mode of production produces this problem. When you preserve the capitalist mode of production, which social democracy does, you are not taking care of the problem. This problem of value distribution is part of the contradiction between the capitalist class and the working class. No amount of policy can stop this antagonism from existing. The contradiction has to be resolved, meaning we have to go from the society we have where we fight over the surplus value to a system where value, wealth, and resources are distributed onto each person as according to they have need, thus ending that contradiction. Capitalism and the problems it causes cannot be stopped by simply writing reforms and policies. The whole system has to be completely changed. Thank you for watching. Go ahead, rate, comment, subscribe, share on various social media. And if you want, there's some other great content here you could check out.